Pokémon Legends Z to A has officially been revealed, and while the teaser trailer doesn't actually have any gameplay, there's a lot for us to talk about with this game. So of course, you know us, we had to pull out the old analysis machine to see what secrets and hidden details we could find. So join us as we dive into the reveal of Pokémon Legends Z to A, answering every possible question that we can. We already took a look at every Pokémon we could find in the trailer, so if you haven't already seen that video, make sure you do. Starting off with, what exactly is the premise for the game? Well, according to the press release, an urban redevelopment plan is underway in Lumiose City to shape the city into a place that belongs to both people and Pokémon. So, what does urban redevelopment mean? Well, it means to address urban decay in a city. It's a term generally used when a city is undergoing heavy restructuring, which involves demolition to various areas and rebuilding with new intent. For the most part, it's to create new opportunities for economic growth in the city. According to Wikipedia, urban redevelopment nowadays is generally used for economic renewal, social and cultural renewal, or environmental renewal. So, considering the idea here is to shape the city into a place that belongs to both people and Pokémon, that certainly fits the bill for both social and cultural renewal and environmental renewal. So maybe this means there will even be areas with wild Pokémon naturally occurring in the city. However, Nintendo of America's official Twitter account phrases things a little bit differently than just urban redevelopment, calling the game a new adventure set entirely within Lumiose City, which is certainly an interesting idea. This game doesn't explore more of the Kalos region and its history, just Lumiose City? Wow, it really is like Midgar now. But in that case, how will the game actually play? Well, Pokémon Legends Arceus had a central hub town of Jubilife Village, and 5 different zones to explore, with each one being fairly large. So presumably, this new Legends Z to A will follow a similar structure. And if it's entirely within Lumiose City, then we may just know exactly how it'll be handled. If we look at these large main roads as dividers instead of roads, then Lumiose City is largely divided into 5 triangular sections, plus the middle section with the Prism Tower, which could serve as a central hub. If this city was made to scale with the player character, it may not be too different from exploring areas of New York City in the Spider-Man games, just divided into sections instead of one large open world. But beyond the division of the city itself, we actually see some possible hints to gameplay in the trailer as well. We see a Pokemon battle between an Aegislash and a Sylveon, and the Sylveon is clearly acting on orders from its trainer. So, what if we could battle anyone in the city? Okay, yeah, that's a big ask, but it's clear that we can probably have battles within the city itself. There's also this clip with the trainer down by the water with the Hawlucha, and they seem to be trying to catch Pokemon in the water, or engage with them at least. And this may be something the player can do too. After all, you could just throw Pokeballs without starting battles in Legends Arceus. Maybe the same will apply here. But at the end of the trailer, we do get one big confirmation for the gameplay. Mega Evolution is back. So, at minimum, the Pokemon that could already Mega Evolve are more than likely coming back here. But maybe we'll even see new Mega Evolutions. I love them, so this would be pretty exciting to me. Some Pokemon, like Charizard and Mewtwo, already have multiple Mega Evolutions, based on the game. So in addition to Mega Charizard X and Y and Mega Mewtwo X and Y, maybe we could see Mega Charizard and Mega Mewtwo Z show up in this game. Okay, so we know there'll be Pokemon battles and the ability to catch Pokemon and Mega Evolutions appearing, but the real question I have right now is how this urban redevelopment of Lumiose City ties into the actual gameplay. Maybe players need to work with their Pokemon to help build parts of the city, or gather resources across the city to assist in the reconstruction? Because right now, it's hard to say how the main premise ties into the gameplay itself. All we really know about it is that the game takes place entirely within the city. But surely it's more than just that, right? After all, how could the game, entirely in the city, capture the dangers of Pokemon established in the original Pokemon Legends? Maybe that'll be connected to the story, with something weird affecting the Pokemon of the region. Maybe the Alpha Pokemon of the original will be replaced by naturally occurring Mega Evolutions? Okay, that would be sick, but given how Mega Evolution works, that's not really likely. Still though, I'm very curious to see how they managed to convey this sense of danger in the city itself. So, with all of these changes happening in Lumiose City, how much has it actually changed? Well, thankfully, we get this nice view of the entire city in the trailer, which we can compare with the map of the city from the official guidebook for Pokémon X and Y. The central plaza in the middle seems to have more going on now, though the Prison Tower is still squarely in the middle. And the 5 color plazas are also still here, but they now all have completely different designs to them. This one in the north, for example, almost looks like it's filled with water, with a small island in the middle. So if this entire game is set in Lumiose City, it may also be massively expanding in size to take up a significant amount of the region, or at least significantly more than it did in the original Pokémon X and Y. Like the power plant to the west, for example, may now be absorbed into part of the city itself, which could explain for why the city is so much larger and can have an entire game set in it, while also keeping the same general shape, from comparing the maps. But if we're seeing Lumiose City rebuilding and possibly expanding, when exactly does this game even take place? The original Pokémon Legends had the player come from modern day, sent to the distant past in the Hisui region when it was first being settled. Initial drawings and sketches early in the trailer at first appear like they're set sometime in the past, almost like architectural mock-ups and blueprints. But the outfits these characters are wearing are kinda conflicting. Like, this person on the right looks more like a modern Pokémon trainer, with gloves and a hat. And the transition to a sort of 3D Tron-style set of visuals make me think more of a 3D mock-up, with wireframes and a plan for the city. Almost like a pitch for this urban redevelopment that would actually be shown to the in-game city officials, to propose the project in the first place. Anyway, the 3D visuals also hint that this game is not actually in the past. There are too many modern designed human characters, such as this woman sitting at a table with her purse, and what seems to be a phone in her hand. So it may be safe to assume that while this is another Legends game, that doesn't necessarily mean it will be set in the past. Yeah, it absolutely could, but the modern setting and influence here can't be ignored, unless perhaps there's some sort of time travel involved, but we can't really tell that right now, obviously. But looking away from Lumiose City specifically, there's another big question here. Why name the game Legends Z to A? Well, it is clearly based on Pokémon X and Y, so a related game would also use letters for its name. And looking back at X and Y, X was for Xerneas, Y was for Yveltal, so Z is clearly for Zygarde, and obviously A is for another new legendary Pokémon. Okay, no, kidding there. Realistically, it could tie into AZ, a major character in Pokémon X and Y, who turned out to be the former king of the Kalos region from over 3,000 years ago. He created the ultimate weapon and used it to end the war between Kalos and another country. His presence in Kalos is what allowed Lysander to attempt to use the ultimate weapon once again, and AZ was last seen at the end of X and Y, finally reunited with his Floette after being freed from his inner torment. All of this taking place in Lumiose City. That being said, it is hard to say exactly how AZ may tie into the game's story, though. Maybe he's the one who wants to see Lumiose City undergo this urban development, for the better of both people and Pokemon? A different angle, involving AZ, would be if this explored his past. If this Pokemon Legends game explored the war from 3,000 years ago. And while it would be incredible to see that happen, and actually explore the Kalos Kingdom from 3,000 years ago, it just doesn't seem likely. After all, we already went over the modern design of Lumiose City, and it definitely wouldn't be like that 3,000 years ago. Another idea with the title, though, is that it could tie into the very idea of redeveloping Lumiose City. From Z to A would be in reference to starting over again. So obviously, that's a few ideas, and I feel kinda confident there might be an element of all three of them here. I think AZ is definitely going to appear and play a role. It would be quite strange to go back to the Kalos region and not have him. Plus, it's very clear that Lumiose City is building up. That's the whole premise of the game after all, so the Z to A starting over again does indeed make sense. And, of course, I do feel confident that we will see a legendary Pokemon whose name starts with A. There could very well be other reasons for titling the game like this, But given that the last game was Pokemon Legends Arceus, I'm inclined to believe the Z and A are probably most likely tied to two specific Pokemon that are going to play a big role here. But backing up a little bit, there is one thing I'm curious on now. Why is Kalos where we revisit next after Scarlet and Violet? Well, geographically, many believe that Kalos and Paldea are actually connected, namely by this unused landmass in the upper right of Paldea, which would connect to the southern end of the Kalos region. And it's also been theorized by many fans that the large crater of Area Zero in the Paldea region was actually created by the ancient ultimate weapon in Kalos. After all, we know it was fired 3,000 years ago, but we never actually saw the result of that. But while this would connect Kalos and Paldea, what would this have to do with Lumiose City and Kalos getting a whole game built around it? Unfortunately, that one may be hard to answer before we actually find out more of the game. Some believe that the A in the logo is reminiscent of the ultimate weapon itself, so it's possible we may see that show up in some fashion. Okay, we're just about done here, but I've got one final question, and it's a big one. How is Zygarde going to factor into the story? After all, we're finally getting the long-awaited Pokemon Z, just in a very different way than we all expected. Zygarde is clearly the Z in the equation after all. The Z in the title even has the same pattern as the Pokemon. Well, Zygarde is the Pokemon that, according to several Pokédex entries, appears to defend the ecosystem in the Kalos region. In Pokemon Sun and Moon, as well as the Ultra versions of these games, players could collect Zygarde cells around the game, not unlike Korok seeds or Breath of the Wild. Collecting Zygarde cells was how it was able to change forms. The most iconic form of Zygarde is its 50% form, as this was how it appeared in X and Y. But the 100% form is far more powerful, so maybe throughout the game, players need to find Zygarde cells to power up the Pokemon. Or perhaps Zygarde appears to stop the expansion of Lumiose City. Maybe such a massive expansion, while in the name of urban redevelopment for people and Pokemon, may actually be endangering the ecosystem of the entire Kalos region. It's hard to say, but Zygarde is going to be pretty important here. But with that, that's pretty much everything we could find to talk about with Pokemon Legends Z to A. Yeah, a lot of it isn't exactly substance here in the trailer itself, but it goes to show just how much there already is to talk about with this game. Personally, I can't wait for when we actually see gameplay. But what do you guys think? Got something to bring up that we didn't mention here? Let us know down in the comments below, and stay tuned to Game Explained for plenty more on Pokemon, and other things gaming as well, of course. Until next time, farewell.